welcome to the Social Relations Collaborative. I'm Jessica Utley. I am a second year grad student currently. Dr. Sinclair is my major professor. I have been with the Social Relations Lab since 2017, first as an employee and then as a graduate student. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what the lab can do for you first and what kind of our general day-to-day operations sort of look like, and then we'll give a short tour of the lab space. So generally we attend national conferences every year. The undergraduates submit as well as the graduate students. Sometimes Dr. Sinclair submits her own as well. We usually write 3 to 4 grant applications every year at a minimum. Sometimes it's more than that. This past year, for example, there were 6. So you will get grant writing experience. We have had grants in the past who work with both the National Institute of Justice, and there's a current grant to work with the Department of Defense as well. You will get writing, editing, and reviewing experience. We also have a blog on our lab website that you will get editing experience for, as well as the undergraduates are usually required to submit blog posts as part of their grade at the end of the semester. In that sort of same vein, we also have social media outreach. So we have an Instagram page, we have a Twitter page, we have a Facebook page, and you'll have the opportunity to manage those pages as well and contribute to the content that gets posted on those pages too. You'll also have the opportunity to work collaboratively with professionals from different fields. So we work with sociologists, computer scientists, engineers, political science majors, criminologists, people in communications, just a wealth of different experiences from different fields. You'll also have the opportunity to manage a large group of undergraduate students. We usually have between 7 to 10 every semester, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. It just sort of depends on what we have going on. So what's great about this lab is that you have the opportunity to work on lots of different projects. For example, right now we're collecting data for what's known as the Friendly Advice Project, where we're examining the effect that female friends have on their female friends' romantic relationships in the way of how they provide advice to their friends and how that can affect the longevity of that romantic relationship. We also continue to collect data for our cyberball project, where we're examining the effects of social rejection on antisocial behavioral responses. So there's also an ongoing project where we're examining online content and identifying that content that could be associated with potential threats. And then we usually pick up a few new projects every semester, usually generated by the students themselves, because that's another really cool thing about this lab, is that you generally have the opportunity to investigate different areas of research that you're interested in. You'll have the freedom to generate sort of your own research ideas, as long as they are somewhat in Dr. Sinclair's wheelhouse of experience, and her wheelhouse is really more like a 21-car garage, which includes stalking and intergroup conflict, bullying, romantic relationships, cross-sex friendships, just anything in that general area, to just give a small sample of what her research interests are. So now we're just going to do a short walking tour of the lab. So this is our lab space. This is the general reception area. This is where the undergrads kind of congregate. This is our group interaction lab right here, where we have a lot of conference table space. We have a big screen for presenting projects, and then additional computer spaces there. This is the administration office. A lot of the undergrads hang out in here as well. But this is kind of the command center for when we are running participants in the lab. These are 2 of the lab spaces for when we're running participants as well. This is the individual lab, and then this is the dyadic lab, where we have 2 participants at a time, usually for partner conditions in cyberball or for our friendly advice study. This is an additional dyadic lab, so this is our space as well. And then this is me and Matt's office space. So this is where you will come to visit us. So I thought I would take a couple of minutes first to talk a little bit about what my thesis project is, and then Matt will talk about his for a minute. But mine is looking at consequences of identity-based peer aggression in high school. So we looked at high school students across 2 different years to see if that data would replicate. But in year 1, we had over 500 student participants, and then in year 2, we had over 400, so pretty big sample sizes. But basically, this is a part of a bigger project where we asked students about their experiences with peer aggression in high school, whether or not they had been physically, socially, verbally, or victimized online by their classmates. And then we asked those who had a series of follow-up questions about how that experience affected them and how they responded to it as well. But for my thesis project, we're specifically looking at those students who said that they had been victims of verbal aggression. So that's name calling, teasing, threatening, stuff like that, compared to those same students, or those students who had been victims of online verbal aggression. So what I'm examining really for this project is we're looking at whether students who identify with traditionally marginalized identities are more likely to be victimized than their peers. Traditionally marginalized identities being things like victimization based on race, based on ethnicity, based on nationality, immigration status, sexual orientation, gender identity, these identities that you really can't change about yourself. We also wanted to see whether they suffer worse psychological and behavioral outcomes than their classmates who had been victimized for just other reasons. And those psychological and behavioral outcomes we're specifically looking at are like worse self-esteem, negative affect, social withdrawal, and self-harm and suicide attempts as well. And then we're looking at whether the outcomes from this identity-based aggression are worse when they're victimized online versus face-to-face, and then whether social alienation mediates the relationship between identity-based peer aggression and these negative psychological and behavioral outcomes.
Hi, my name is Matt. I'm Dr. Sinclair's first-year student. My thesis topic is not quite as far developed as Jesse's. It still has to be proposed and accepted and all that, but the current plan is to test 2 theory-grounded models of threat assessment and run a sort of comparative analysis on them and kind of see which one comes out on top. A lot of my research interest involves extremism, which is quite different from Jesse's, but it just kind of showcases the variability in your research focus in this lab that you can have.